Today we're comparing the Anvil Asgard against the MISC Starlancer Max. Now these two ships have different intended purposes, but at the same time they share a lot of the same properties, and they're actually used in game for very similar things. Let's jump in to see how they compare to one another. When the Starlancer Max joined the game last October, it really found itself in a special spot between the smaller cargo ships that really topped out at the 150-170 SCU range, and the Hercules-sized ships at the 500-ish range. Now, it finds itself a little on the lower side, but kind of right in the middle of the two, and it really found kind of a unique sweet spot there. Now, with the introduction of the Anvil Asgard, it's actually got a little bit of competition. The Anvil Asgard was just introduced as part of the most recent Invictus here, and it really is a head-to-head competitor as far as the cargo size goes with the Starlancer Max. Now, the Anvil Asgard's intended purpose is actually a vehicle dropship, but I think the majority of people in game these days are actually using it more to run those medium-sized cargo runs without having to upgrade all the way to a Hercules. Let's compare the two of these head-to-head. Let's start out with the design and aesthetic comparison between the two ships, starting with the Starlancer Max. The Starlancer Max is a ship by MISC, and it really holds itself true to the styling that MISC normally has. It's typically got the gunmetal finish on the outside. It looks very rugged, very industrial, but at the same time, well put together. It resembles a Prospector without having the nice bubble glass cockpit. Now, it does have the typical mailbox slot cockpit that you expect and you see off the Hull A and the Hull C, but it is not the same ship by any means. It really is still unique in its styling and its purpose and functionality. The Hull A and the Hull C are very, very cargo-oriented, whereas the Starlancer Max is kind of more of a multi-purpose ship with the ability to carry a lot of cargo for its size, but also to be able to carry a lot of vehicles. Now, the only real limitation on the Starlancer Max is actually the height of the ramp in the back. It does seem to get to be a little bit of a pain for some people. Now, let's move over to the Anvil Asgard. Now, the Anvil Asgard is not what I expect out of an Anvil ship, but it actually is really true to the styling of the Anvil ships. So it is a somewhat variant of the Valkyrie. It is larger and differently shaped, and it's not really a variant, but at the same time it really is, because they do look almost identical inside. So despite its weird relationship with the Valkyrie, it is really what you've come to expect out of other Anvil ships. It's really military focused, really about getting the job done, without a lot of the creature comforts that you would come to expect out of other manufacturers. It really is all focused on the functionality. Now, it does have things like a food maker and beds and things like that inside of it, but at the same time, they're very bare bones, they're very basic, they're very exactly what you need and nothing more. Taking a look at the performance and capability of these two ships, they're actually fairly close, which is quite surprising. So sticking with the Anvil Asgard first off here, it is actually technically considered a medium ship by RSI, which I believe at one point they did actually classify it as a large ship, but it is actually currently classified as a medium ship. Now, it does have a crew size of 1 to 2 people, and it flies very well as a solo pilot. Now, yes, it is a medium ship, but it actually flies very fast with a high maneuverability even for a medium ship. And it has a cargo grid size of about 180 SCU. Now, in my testing, you can very easily push this well above 300. I easily got 300, and I believe it was 312 SCU on there, without really even finagling trying to get things in. There's still enough room to walk around and stuff. So it does definitely hold a lot more than it's intended to. So, now switching over to the Starlancer Max here, this is actually a large ship, and it flies like a very large ship, to be honest. It has a crew size of 1 to 4 people. Now, the view in the cockpit is bad, for lack of better words, and I really don't like flying it, simply for that reason. Now, other than that, it's a great ship to fly, but it does have an SCM speed of 135 currently in game today, with it being bumped up to 160 in the next patch in June here. But its maneuverability is very slow. Its speed is very slow, even for a large ship, which makes it very frustrating to fly. Like, even landing both of them just for the screenshot, the Asgard kind of zips along. It's nice, it's agile, it's maneuverable. Whereas the Starlancer Max is slow, it's sluggish, and it really feels like a ship a lot larger than I think it actually is. Which is strange, being that they actually hold roughly the same amount of cargo, with the Starlancer Max coming in at 224 on-grid storage, which you can easily bump up to about 320, give or take, if you fit it in the back compartment between the rows, as the cargo is really only intended to go on the outside and you're intended to drive a vehicle in the middle. You can actually put cargo in there and get it up to about 320, I think it is. So, given that they actually hold roughly the same amount of cargo, and neither ship does anything outside of that, it's weird that one's considered a medium ship with such a small crew and the other's considered a large ship and flies so much larger. Now we move into the components, which is really where we start to see differences between the two ships. The only similarity between these two is the power plants, where both of them have two size 2 power plants in it. Moving into coolers, we've got the Anvil Asgard coming in with 3 size 2 coolers, Starlancer Max coming in with 2 size 2 coolers. And moving over to shields, this is where we see a very big difference, because the Asgard has 4 size 2 shields in it, compared to the 1 size 3 shield that you see in the Starlancer Max. This isn't really overly surprising, given that the Anvil Asgard is technically a vehicle dropship. So you do expect it to have a little bit better protection and armor to it, as it is meant to go into hotter zones than the Starlancer Max is. Now, I would say the Starlancer Max is actually designed to go in and pull cargo out of certain areas, but naturally being a dropship versus a cargo ship, you're going to be dropping vehicles in areas that are potentially under heavier fire than you are moving cargo that's going to be kind of off to the sides, if you will. Now, the Anvil Asgard has a 1.85 SCU of quantum fuel on board. Compare that to the 3.6 SCU that the Starlancer Max currently has. And it starts to really show the difference between the two ships, as I believe the Starlancer Max is really intended more for longer term flights where you're carrying cargo for greater distances, whereas the Asgard kind of lends itself very nicely to quick haul short between the planet and the station, or between the planet and an orbiting larger ship, maybe an Idris or something along those lines. That, I think, is really the intention. So the Asgard really isn't designed to go super far distances, but again, it is a medium ship as well, so it's actually going to be a lot better on fuel when you are out there flying. And now we move into the weaponry, and the weaponry is where things get really interesting. So starting with the missiles, both of them have 16 size 3 missiles, so that's roughly the same. Now, in the Starlancer Max, you've got 2x2 size 4 turrets and 2x2 size 4 remote turrets. Now, in the Asgard, you actually have 6 size 3 turrets that are controlled by the pilot. And this is where things get a little bit weird to me, because when you look at the weaponry controlled in the Asgard versus the Starlancer Max, the Asgard actually seems to be highly undergunned. So in the Asgard, the pilot controls 6 size 3 weapons, whereas in the Starlancer Max, the pilot controls 4 size 4 weapons. Now that gives a pilot a DPS of 2750 in the Asgard versus 4100 in the Max. That means that in the Max, it is substantially better gunned for the pilot. So if we look at what the crew has, in the Asgard, they have a single turret which has 2 size 4 weapons on it. In the Max, they have 2 turrets that have 2 size 4 weapons on it, giving the Max roughly double the DPS for the crew over what the Asgard has. This is strange to me because the Asgard is designed to go into those hot zones and drop off vehicles. I would expect it to be substantially better armed for what it really is. Now, the one thing I will say using both of these ships, I would actually pick the Asgard any day over the Starlancer Max to pick a fight with, simply because of its agility. Yes, the Starlancer Max, if you can land a shot, it's going to be a lot more powerful. Problem is, I'm not that great of a pilot, and landing that shot is a lot more difficult. So I will actually take the Asgard because I can move around a lot better, and I have a better chance of getting a shot on the opposing party. Now, yeah, it's not going to do as much damage, but I get a lot more shots on target. So that's really the difference, because the agility, I think, makes up for the fact that it's so underpowered as far as weaponry goes. So I'm actually going to say these are roughly equivalent, even though the numbers do not show that at all. Now let's talk about the health points between the two ships as well, because I think that's an important point to cover here. So the Starlancer Max has a total health pool of about 84,000, give or take, maybe a little bit of change in there. Compare that to the Asgard, which has a total health pool of 77,000. Now those are roughly equivalent, right? The main difference is when you look at the actual vital parts of each. So in the Asgard, the vital parts are the nose and the tail. Both of those come in at 20,000 health points. Now, compare that to the body, which is a vital part of the Starlancer Max, which comes in at 35,000 health points. That's almost half. And in my experience, one of the biggest problems that I had with the Asgard was the fact that my tail section kept getting damaged. And it would disable the engines, and then I couldn't fly anymore. I think this in the Asgard is actually a lot lower than it should be, and I think this really deserves a bit of a buff. Especially when you consider the intended purpose of the Asgard. I mean, this ship is designed to go in and drop off troops and, well, primarily vehicles, not so much troops, but it's designed to go into super hot zones. And when your nose and your tail are the weakest parts of the ship, your chances of survival are just minimal. Alright, now on to the cost and value of the two ships. Now the Starlancer Max has actually been in game long enough that you can actually purchase it in game at 8.8 million credits. That's a decent price, and I'd say it's fairly valued in that range. Now, being it is a newer ship, I do expect it to be a little bit higher, and I'm sure that price will come down in time. Or other ships will rise up against it, I guess. But unfortunately, the Anvil Asgard was just released as part of Invictus, so we can't really compare the in-game pricing. So I'll use the store pricing for the comparison. Now, I know not everybody's a fan of that, but it's really the only comparison I've got. So the Starlancer Max was priced in the store at $250 US. The Anvil Asgard actually comes in substantially higher than that at $350. Now, I do think it's a better ship, but that's really a personal preference thing in that regard. So I would say that the Starlancer Max is probably actually priced a little bit on the too low side compared to the other ships, but I'm not going to complain. I think both ships are a decent value. The Asgard is a little bit overpriced. I would say you're really paying that military tax, for lack of better words, we seem to pay on ships in the game. Now, if we move over and we actually take a look at what you can do with these ships, I would say that both of them are very similar. Now, the intended purpose of the Asgard, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is actually a vehicle dropship. Meant to go in very heated areas, drop off a bunch of ground vehicles, and get out of there. Now, that's not something you make money off of in-game today, anyways. I'm sure they can introduce new missions for that in the near future, but I'm really going to focus on kind of the cargo, the bounties, the patrol and ambush type missions, as both of those are very similar in that regard. Now, you can do pretty much the same missions with both of them. So I'm going to actually call that one a tie as far as how much money you can make off of it, which does make the Starlancer Max kind of a better value, if you will. Now, again, the one thing I will note, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is I do think the Asgard is a lot better to fight with. So if you are going to be doing the bounties, the patrols, and the ambush missions, you might be better off to go in that direction with the Asgard. Now, as far as cargo goes, I actually like the Starlancer Max, but it is definitely an acquired taste, which I'll get to in a second here. So if we look at the feedback from the community on both ships, start with the Starlancer Max again. Now, the side cargo elevators are definitely not everybody's favorite thing. Can be a little bit difficult to actually load because you have to put the cargo in and kind of slide it, and you always seem to be on the wrong side of the ship. I'll admit that. Now, people do complain that it is a little bit slow and it does maneuver pretty poorly. Now, they are boosting that in 4.2 as well in June's release here. That should actually be out any time. So I do think that will help in that regard. Now, as far as the positive goes, everybody likes the fact that it's really true to the MISC styling, and you really get the look and the feel of MISC. Now, it is one of those love it or hate it situations, because not everybody likes the way the MISC ships look. So moving over to the Anvil Asgard, some of the complaints people have is the fact you can't use the paints from the Valkyrie, despite the fact it's kind of a variant. People do complain it's a little bit slow to respond. The health pool and the shields are not really as high as they should be for dropping into hot zones. And I would agree in all of those regards actually as well. Now, people do like that it has really good firepower for its size. It's easily solo capable. Definitely a fan of that. It's got a really large cargo space, especially for a medium ship, and it can definitely hold its own. So the feedback does seem to be about matched on both of them, and I really do think that it's just people who are true to the different brands. Now, personally, my feedback, I think each of them serve a time and a place, for lack of better words. Now, I really do actually like the fact that the cargo bays are separate on the Starlancer Max. When you're hauling cargo contracts, it's very often that you get different packages that have to go to different places, or different containers, sorry. I like the fact that I essentially have 3 different unique places to put the cargo, or if you consider the back split up as well. So it's actually very easy to say, okay, well, this one's going to this destination, this one's going to this destination, etc. when you are actually loading the ship. I would say that's definitely one of the biggest pluses for the Starlancer to me. Now, it is really easy to kind of pull up, put your belly next to the cargo elevator, in some hangars, of course, to actually unload. Now, the problem is unloading the other side. That's one thing I don't really like about the Starlancer Max, is it's very difficult to unload the other side. Now, I do tend to kind of grab the cargo containers and throw them up over the walkway. It's just a little bit weird, to be honest, and it's almost like you have to continuously remaneuver the ship. That I don't really like, despite the fact that it is nice when you have different areas going to different places. Now, as far as the Anvil Asgard goes, a couple of things I really do like about it. I love the cargo grid. It's this nice, big, wide open place that I can put just about anything I want to put in there. The other thing that's very nice and a definite pro is it's actually 4 SCU high. Now compare that to the Starlancer Max, which is only 3 SCU high in the back. And you definitely start to see why the Asgard has some appeal, because you can store 2 of the 4 SCU, sorry, these 2 of the 8 SCU containers on top of one another. It's 4 SCU tall. That's very beneficial. That makes loading cargo a lot easier, quite honestly. Now, I also like the maneuverability of the Asgard over the Starlancer Max. So I would say if you're moving large sums of cargo between 1, maybe 2 places, the Asgard is really the thing that you want to use. Now, if you're loading a lot of the cargo contracts that take multiple destinations, the Starlancer Max is definitely the one that you want to use. So that's how the 2 of those compare. Now, if you're running bounties, as I've said a couple of times in here already, I would definitely use the Asgard. The other kind of real good use for both ships that I haven't talked about yet is running bunkers. Now, I would say both of these are probably pretty tied, with the Starlancer Max having a slight advantage in the fact that you can actually carry cargo containers in addition to the vehicle, whereas in the Asgard, it is really one or the other. Now, that being said, personally, I would probably never carry large sums of cargo and go do bunkers, so it's not something that really helps me. Now, that is definitely an option if there ever was that kind of hybrid gameplay or a reason to try to do that. I would honestly say between these 2 ships, there is really no clear winner. There is certain times that I will use each of them. Now, I do use each of them on a regular basis, but I have found myself using the Starlancer Max a lot less since I got the Asgard. I just like the maneuverability and how easy it is to fly in comparison. That being said, the Max does still have a time and a place. What are your thoughts between the Starlancer Max and the Anvil Asgard? Do you have a favorite between the 2? Is there a time and a place that you would use one that I haven't necessarily mentioned here? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. This has been another random ship comparison video. I will see you in the verse. Thank you for tuning in.